I'm all about the music that I want to write and finding the art form that will allow me to do that, more so than finding the marketplace I want to work in and adapting my own voice.
While you were in Europe, did you get an opportunity to start to work professionally and do some work with film music or commissions or anything while you were there?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's only natural, where you go to school, you're going to start developing a lot of opportunities there. I think while I was at the Royal College, I mean, of course, you score a lot of student films, you meet filmmakers, you do that thing, right? One of the other fun things for me was I got hired by a record company called Silver Screen Records that specialized in re-recording old film scores. And a lot of these old film scores, they just didn't have access to the scores. So my job was to sit down with a pair of headphones and transcribe the scores, and that's great training right there, right? It's nothing like having someone plop down this John Barry piece or a John Williams piece or Howard Shore or whatever, and then you sit down and just write out every single thing you hear.
The composer David Maslanka told me in a lesson once that he's like, if you really want to study a composer, he said, take out their score and rewrite it on paper, note for note, as if you're writing it, and absorb it as you do that. And basically that's what you were doing.
I think transcription, or I think, what you said about note for note copying is a great educational tool. The way I did it had the added benefit of you get to, you're forced to listen to it, you try to write down what you hear, and then an orchestra records it. And then you get to really hear how badly you screwed things up so you can learn those mistakes and go back later. I mean, there's nothing like the trial by fire in front of an orchestra, as you know, right?
And you got paid for that education.
Yeah, that's the best part of it, right?
So you're doing this, you're going to school over there, you're doing this work. You eventually decide, you come back to the States, you come to LA. What was the first thing that was your first opportunity coming back to LA?
Well, fortunately, I still had this work with Silver Screen Records, right? Mm-hmm. So that sort of kept me afloat through the early years of moving to LA. I mean, as you know, it's not an easy industry for a newcomer, and I had no contacts, right? So I started knocking on doors, honestly. I started introducing myself around town. I was orchestrating for John Ottman on this movie, or I was helping Michael Brook out in the studio while he was recording this new album, or I was doing synth mock-ups for Joel McNeely, or Marco Beltrami gave me the opportunity to co-write a short film score with him, things like that. I interned for Hans, it was Media Ventures at the time, now it's Remote Control. It's only 4 blocks away from my own studio now, actually, that was all very instructive. It really helped me learn a lot. I mean, what really pulled it together for me was Civilization 4, right? And that game. And that happened about 4 years into my tenure in LA, I guess you'd call it that. I moved to LA in 2000, and Civilization 4 came out in 2005. And the way I got that gig is honestly the way that it's like the origin story of so many composers who actually get a big break somehow. My college roommate, we roomed together in Oxford, actually. We did the Oxford Overseas Studies program together. He was a computer science and history major, and he became the game designer for the Civilization franchise. And he remembered a lot of the music that I had recorded and produced at Stanford with my a cappella group. And when they were designing Civ 4, he actually stuck one of the tracks on the menu screen, right? So cool of him. And they thought, wow, this works great. Let's have Chris write something new for our game. So I get a call from him, and he said, we like this combination of sounds, the African gospel thing, the orchestral thing, the sort of the world music percussion thing. Can we hire you to write something new? And I thought, okay, sure, I'd love to try my hand at writing for video games, right? So they gave me, like a month to write something, and I basically sat down and I thought, okay, I'm gonna write basically a fun African gospel piece, right? And I wrote the song Baba Yetu, which you know, which you've performed with the GSPO. And I mean, that's what really sort of took me out of the shadows of, you know, like ghosting for so-and-so or orchestrating for so-and-so, or, you know, that, and gave me something, a kernel of my own identity that I could grow with, right? I mean, I'd had my own scoring jobs before, but nothing like a game franchise like Civilization. And fortunately for me, that track really took off. And I mean, 15 years later, the track is still, it's crazy. It's just crazy where it pops up. A couple of months ago, there was a Jeopardy question, which said something like, the choral staple Baba Yetu, it means this in Swahili, right? You know, and I'm just like, I can't believe Alex Trebek just, you know, mentioned my music on Jeopardy. Like, this is mind blowing, right? That this sort of thing happened, right? So it's been a real ride for me. We're actually coming up on 15 years since Civ4 was released, and my new record label, Decca, is planning to do something to sort of mark the occasion, right? Make a moment out of it. So
wow,
it's funny, just one piece can just take off and do a lot for you.
Where did the idea come from for you to use the text and the translation the way that you did of the Lord's Prayer in Swahili, correct?
Yes, yes. African gospel music is largely, you know, Christian in nature, right? And there's a long history of you know, what do you call it? Missionaries using Swahili all up and down the African continent as sort of like, you know, the default language for preaching the gospel, right? So there's this tradition that's sort of like inherent to the African gospel tradition. With regards to that particular text, it's one of these things where actually I'd sort of written the music first, and I thought, okay, I've got this great melodic hook, got this great idea, I need words for it. Talked to a friend of mine. I talked to the singing group that I knew was going to sing it, and they suggested the text to me. They said, you know, we know the pronunciation of this, maybe you can use this. And that's where it came from. And it actually worked out really well because religion was a playable element in the Civilization franchise for the very first time. So it made sense.
Baba Yetu is not only from Civilization 4, but it's the opening to Calling All Dawns. And where did that come from? Where did the idea come from to take and make the song cycle that includes that?
Okay, well, first of all, if I write a good tune, I'm going to try to make it last as long as I possibly can. I'm not one to, like, you know, oh, I wrote a great piece of music. Oh, that's fine. It just dies on the shelf or something like that. I really want to get it out there, right? I really wanted to do two things. One, put a footprint in the record business by releasing a proper album, right? This is my idea. And I wanted to leverage the success I had in the video game world, because by that time, Baba Yetu had already kind of done the rounds, and it was already very popular. The sheet music had already been published by Alfred. It was already kind of a hit, and I wanted to build off of that. But secondly, I didn't want to just be that guy who writes African gospel choral pieces that sound like they could go in The Lion King or something like that, right? There's a pigeonholing effect that you know about here in LA. I thought, if I can't, you know, at the very least, let me be the world music guy, right? The guy who incorporates world vocal traditions, of which I'm actually reasonably versed in coming into this. Let me at least do that and construct something that's more about sort of a celebration of all the different singing styles out there in the world.
That adds to the whole mystique of what you did, because you ended up creating this amazing work with that whole song cycle, inspired by the success of one song, and you going, but I don't want to be pigeonholed. How can I? And I think it's amazing, you know, how our lives work, where your background, studying humanities, studying literature, studying music, all comes together into a place where you have this successful song. You don't want to get pigeonholed. You want to, you know, talk about world music and bringing all these different cultures of music together. Everything you had been doing up to that point in your life kind of helped you to create what you did. And I think it's an amazing work, but I think it's even more amazing when you describe there the inspiration and the decisions you made as to why you created what you created. And if you didn't want to be pigeonholed, I think you succeeded, because when you listen to that, every track to the next track, you've taken us to a different country, a different culture, different language, different style of music, and you're just flexing your muscles. It's like, here's what I'm capable of, but all following the success of Baba Yetu, which, to go a step further, you ended up becoming a Grammy winner because of this. What was that experience like?
It was pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, it's great. It's fantastic. I mean, you know, and first of all, like, you know, it's one of these things where it's like you never know quite how far things will go, you know. But I gotta tell you, when I wrote the piece and I first played it for a couple of high school friends of mine, they just happened to visit in LA, and I just played it for them, and I saw their reaction. And it was right at that moment where I knew, okay, I've done something really good here. Like, this is, I think this is gonna be pretty good. You know, I'm very pleased with how this turned out. I didn't know that, you know, 15 years later, it'd be a question on Jeopardy. But it's, you know, sometimes when you do something right, you kind of got a sense that, oh, you know, I just hit a home run here, right? So, I mean, you know, I'm extremely grateful for the journey that it's taken me on. I think I'd like to think that I've been successful in taking that success and spinning off other successes from it. I mean, I think this you know, plays into questions of career building. You know, what do you do? How do you do it? How do you parlay success in one field into another? I think what's been interesting to me is, you know, I just signed with Decca, as I mentioned to you before. What I think has happened in the last 20 years is that concert music has become a lot more open to music from the media world, like film and video game scores. I think that's just kind of a reality of the world that we're in right now. I think also the hardline modernist new music stance has softened quite a bit. Mm-hmm. If I were just 20 years younger and just entering the marketplace now, knowing what I know about, you know, the landscape of film music now versus, you know, the landscape of the contemporary classical world, it's conceivable I might have gone a different route and not gone into film scoring. Like we talked about at the head of the interview, I'm all about the music that I want to write and finding the art form that will allow me to do that, more so than finding the marketplace I want to work in and adapting my own voice to fit that marketplace. Not to say that I don't do that when I'm scoring films and games. I mean, a lot of my, you know, more far-ranging sonic stuff is for scoring projects, right? But at the heart of it, I love writing for an orchestra, and I love writing for choirs, and I love working with text, and I love telling stories, and I love creating albums and large-scale dramatic works. That's just the heart of who I am.
Thank you for watching. For more great videos, subscribe to the Maestro Fox YouTube channel. To learn more about the Maestro, visit StevenAllenFox.com.